Hi, I'm Beverly Harzog, host of Your Personal Economy. You can't control what goes on in the world in terms of inflation or even the price of groceries, but you can control your own personal economy. And I'm going to show you just how to do that because the way you spend your money is the way you spend your life. And I want you to have the best life possible. Welcome to episode number 29. I have a special guest today. It's Patrina Dixon. She is a certified financial education instructor as well as a registered financial consultant. And she's also the founder of It's My Money, which is one of my favorite podcasts. I have watched almost every episode that she's done, and she is fabulous. You really need to check that out. Thank you for joining me today, Patrina.
Thank you, Beverly, for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you. We spent a couple of months trying to come up with a date where we could both get together because you're so in demand right now.
I think likewise. I think we both have amazing lives, on the personal front, and then the work that we do calls us and pulls us in different locations. So yes, I'm so excited we finally made it happen.
Yeah, and like me, you are very passionate about financial literacy and helping people understand how to manage their money. And that's why I just really love talking to you.
Yes.
All right. So, why don't we first talk about since you're so great at money management tips,
Mm.
why don't you give us just a couple of tips about spending? There are a lot of spending fails that go on. I've had
Right.
a few myself, I
Yes.
admit, that when you're trying to stick to a budget
Mhm.
and you're not tracking your spending or something like that, that's where people get into trouble, don't you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that was a great tee up. I always say to folks, it's not when I talk about money management, it doesn't mean you can't spend. It means you need to know how much you have to spend, right? And the way that you know that best is by budgeting. So budgeting is by far the fundamental thing that you need to have in place is a budget or a spending plan, something to tell you how much you have coming in and how much you have going out. And then that will enable you to determine how much you have to spend. So it's about empowering your spending by knowing how much you have to spend and when you can spend. So maybe it's not from this paycheck, maybe it's the paycheck in 2 more weeks. But again, you can spend. It's about making sure you take care of the things you need to take care of so that you can do the things that you want to take care of. And that most times the wanting is the spending.
Yeah, that's a great point. I just did an episode on budgeting,
Mhm.
and I talked a lot about wants versus needs.
Mhm.
I saw a post you did on X, formerly known as Twitter, about financial self-care.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you were at a hotel or you were celebrating your birthday month, and
Yes.
I loved that post so much because I often talk about financial self-care. And like you said, having a budget doesn't mean you can't spend, but you're very mindful of where you're spending. And you
Yes.
do take care of yourself. I mean, you do set aside money for some financial self-care.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the thing. I tell people because the reason why I got into teaching finance many years ago now is my financial house was not in order, right? And I made a lot of money, but I spent a lot of money. And one of the things that helped me along my way, one was budgeting, but another was having an appreciation for delayed gratification. So I chuckle, and when I talk to young folks, I talk about my phone. I have folks who's like, they call me Miss Patrina or the It's My Money lady. And they're like, oh my gosh, which phone do you have? Like, that's a 12, because there's a much higher number out now. I'm like, it still works. It still texts. It still takes pictures. I can still check my email. So it's about when it's time for me to get a new one, I will get a new one. And that's just one example. But this 12, I like the size of it. I like everything about it, and it serves the purpose that I need it for. So I didn't just go and get the new one because there was a new one and I didn't need any other features that the other ones may have. And that's an example of I can spend and buy it if I want to, but I don't need it. So I can choose to spend what I would have paid on the phone on something else. So that's another way of, when you look at when you want to spend, think about what it is that you want to do. What's the priority and even the things you want to spend on. And that will maybe shift some of the things that you're planning to do to something that you really want to do and spend it on that versus, a few smaller other things.
Yeah, that is a great point. One of my taglines is the way you spend your money is the way you spend your life.
Uh-huh.
And when you do pay attention to spending, you get to spend it exactly the way you want to spend it. Your money works for you instead of the other way
Yes.
around.
Hey, yes,
Hey.
I like that. Yes, yes, I love that.
I think we've had a similar background when it comes to money. I mean, I made so many mistakes when I was young. I got into terrible credit card debt. And
Yes.
that's actually what led me to do what I do now, and yeah, it's a lot of fun to help people get their money under control, and spending is such a huge part of that.
It is,
Now,
because
let's
we
look
do
at
it
the
every day. We do
yeah,
it every
ab
day. I mean, from
uh
gas to a soda pop to whatever it is, and when you manage your money to know how much you have to spend, it lessens, stress. It's not gonna do away with stress, but it'll lessen you stressing about those sort of things, because you know exactly your boundaries, if you will.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it also, as you just mentioned, helps decrease financial anxiety. There's a
Yes,
lot of that going around right
yes,
now,
absolutely.
and when you've got your financial house in order, I like that analogy. It helps you to be less stressed,
Yes.
okay? Even if you still have some money worries, you're doing the best you can, and you know where you stand, and to me, that's just everything. That's financial peace of mind right there.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, and one thing, I talk about a lot is having a budgeted splurge, and this is exactly what you've been talking about. Set aside some money for yourself, financial self-care, but have
Yes,
that in your budget,
that's
okay?
great.
All you're doing is saying, "Okay, I'm not gonna waste this money on 6 lattes this week, but I'm going
Mhm.
to go get a spa pedicure instead."
Exactly
Or
right. Exactly.
maybe 2 lattes and a manicure.
Yes, exactly. And then,
Any
to even bring it down even further, I don't know about places where folks may go, but when I go get a pedicure, the pedicurist, I don't know if that's the right word, they come out with this paper like, which one do you want? Even knowing how much you can spend on the pedicure is important, because they vary in prices, right? So you can have an experience that is within your budget and still have that pedicure, versus spending or getting the most expensive one just because when your budget only allows you to have the one in the middle. So it is really down to that granular level. When you're budgeting or managing your cash flow regularly, it will help you spend in a way that supports your budget and your goals.
I love that, and I love that you mentioned goals because that's so important.
Yes.
And that's a good time to transition into savings tips
Yes.
right now
Yes.
because it's important to have goals when it comes to saving your money. You want to have an emergency fund. You also want to think about retirement. You want to think about investments. It's a lot to think about. Do you have some suggestions to help people get started with a fund or with investments?
Yeah, so let's start with saving. So the question I get asked very often is, should I save even when I'm trying to pay down debt? And I always say, absolutely. How much you save may vary, because, as you know, personal finance is just that. It's personal. So that will vary based on your budget, what you have coming in, and what you need to pay out. But I encourage people to automate their savings, especially those that work for employers, and make sure that you're saving it where you're earning the most on that money by way of interest. So high yield savings accounts. My favorite are online only savings accounts, and you can do your research to find the one that works best for you, or a credit union if the credit union is you have eligibility to be a part of that credit union, work in a certain spot, work in a geographic area, work at a certain company, and or worship at a certain place. That those are eligibility factors for a credit union. And most times credit unions have high yield savings accounts as well. But brick and mortar, that is the place for your checking accounts, your everyday, I call them your operational accounts, but not for your savings. That savings are about long-term things. It could be emergency fund, it could be a vacation, college, buying a home, whatever it is. So you want that money that's sitting to earn as much as it can, and high yield savings account can support that.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought up about the brick and mortar because the savings rates at those banks are not very good.
Do they exist? When you have something that's 0.01, I mean, really?
Yeah, that was an understatement.
Yes, exactly right, exactly right. So I call what I say to folks often when I'm doing workshops and the likes, is that those places are, or institutions, financial institutions, are for what I would call checking accounts. A lot of people think because it's around the corner, I can get to it easier. Those get to it easier doesn't support your long-term saving strategies. So don't think about convenience when you think about saving. You do want to understand how you can get your money out if you need to, but that's about operating, putting money in and taking money out, paying the bills, paying the mortgage, paying the car payment, whatever have you. But it's not for having your money sit there to, only earn 0.01%. So that's a strategy, right? Saving is a strategy. It's not the only thing. Yes, you can save as well as paying down debt. That's where your budget comes into play, how much you can save each time. And if you automate it, so have your employer directly deposit money into your high yield savings, I call it automated and forget about it, right? So it doesn't even become a part of the the budgeting that you have to do because it's already gone into the account. So you don't have to make that transaction to get it into your savings account. So again, that's one way. So investing is another, right? And you just have to understand there's the strategy of investing has some risk aligned to it. So depending on your risk tolerance level will determine, how much you invest, where you invest, how often you invest. So those are things that you have to consider when you're thinking about investing. And it's money that when you do choose, if your budget allows for, to begin investing, know that you could gain, but you can also lose. And that is very different of a strategy than it is from savings. So you just have to understand it. It's an awesome strategy to have in your financial spectrum, if you will, financial portfolio is investing options, but just understand the difference between the two.
Great advice. And while we're talking about saving, you have done a lot of work educating high schoolers about money management,
Oh,
and
wow.
I really love that. I
Yeah.
have said for so many years, it's so important that high schoolers get a better grasp. We're asking 18-year-olds to make decisions about where to go to college and get these ginormous loans, and they don't often understand what happens when they have to pay these loans back with interest. So
Absolutely.
when we're talking about saving strategies and spending as well, do you have any tips for parents of high schoolers to help get them ready for young adulthood when it comes to talking about money? I think we're a society now that's more open to talking about these things. When I was growing up, my parents never talked
Mine
about money.
either. Mine either. And that's again why I do the work. Mine either.
Yeah.
Because I learned later.
I knew nothing. So when I was in my 20s, got out of college, got into debt. I was a CPA, for goodness sakes. Still, I know it's embarrassing. I still got into horrible trouble. But
Yeah,
personal finance is completely different. So
it
what kind of
is.
tips do you have just to kind of get parents an idea of how to approach their kids? Because some kids might think it's boring, but when you start learning it and feel empowered, it's not boring.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I answer that question, I'll say this. I'd be remiss if I didn't. I advocated for personal finance to be taught in high school because I firmly believe that to all of what you said, that most 18-year-olds, or a lot of 18, not most, a lot of 18-year-olds have to sign their names on a dotted line for probably the largest, one of two of the largest bills or financial situations that they'll get in their lives, next followed by a home. And a lot of them don't understand personal finance and how it works, how debt works, how signing up for something like that in the repayment part of it. And it is the reason why I advocated for personal finance to be a required course before high schoolers leave high school in Connecticut. So Connecticut became the 21st state where high schoolers have to take a personal finance course before graduation. So it's not an elective, it's not just in some schools. All across the state of Connecticut, the governor signed the bill June of 2023, and I was invited to the bill signing. And now I'm so happy about that because it took 4.5 years. I pressed on our state senators and the likes to pass this law, and they did. And again, Connecticut became the 21st state to make that happen. That's how passionate I am about them learning. Because when I look back on why I didn't understand it, why I didn't know, my mom, wonderful woman, and taught me a bunch of things, but she didn't know this. And I'm like, well, School should be where it is. That should be one of the places. Yes, at home as well. But when you don't, when you people at home don't aren't managing their money well, then that's not a conversation you're going to have at home, right? So if you have what I call the three-legged stool, the student interested, the teachers are teaching it, and then it's also being taught at home, then you have a well-balanced financial situation going on for the teenager. So tips for moms, I would say, is moms and dads, guardians, grandparents, whoever has the high school student, talk to the kid, your youth about money. Have them participate in money decisions that align to them, like going to the grocery store, picking out certain items, talking about, you don't necessarily have to tell them how much you make, but incorporate them into conversations where you are spending money. Don't always say no, 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 they can't have this or you can't buy this. Have them make choices about, okay, do you want the McDonald's or do you want the doll baby, whatever it is, and explain to them why those are decisions. So when you encourage them to participate in money conversations, when you have them, when you give them money, right? So say it's by doing chores or getting a grades, whatever it is, and then and when they want to spend it, help them to understand if you spend it all in one transaction, you're not going to have any more for later. So all of those things can be taught they can be taught younger than high school, but really in high school. So that's what I would say is one, encourage, involve them in the conversations. Don't make it money a taboo conversation. Don't make it something where it's like, oh my gosh, like money is bad. My family doesn't have money, because all the answers are no. Change that conversation to something more positive relative to money, where it's a decision making. So they're not thinking about how much that's not there, but what they do have and what they can do with what's there. And then lastly, I would say is ensuring when oftentimes, excuse me, when parents and children are thinking about college, it's about, I want to go to this school, that school, or that school, not really looking at the price tag of that. Maybe in some household situations, it's going to community college for the first 2 years and then going on to whatever that 4-year university is. And they can still have a well-rounded education, if higher education, if that's what they want. So I would say, again, just having the conversations, not shunning them out. Our young folks today are very astute. So sometimes back in the day, it was young parents didn't think young people knew as much, even though we probably did back then as well. But now there's information everywhere. So have them involved in the conversation. And therefore, when they're getting to the financial piece, then they begin to ask questions, because now they understand, wait, I can't just make this decision blindly. I need to understand a lot of things before I sign this dotted line.
I love that. And congrats on what you did in Connecticut.
Thank
That
you.
is
Thank you.
astounding. It
Thank
really
you.
is. I love that.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
I love what you said about involving them in the conversation. When
Yes.
my kids were teenagers, my kids are grown now, but
Mhm.
when they were teens, we started having monthly family money meetings,
Yes.
and we would talk about the budget. We didn't
Yes.
get into too many details about how
Yeah.
much money we made, but
Yes.
we talked about how much we could spend on various items
Right.
and let the kids start picking out things. And
Yes.
I remember going to the grocery store with them, and I showed them how to look at the different prices and compare. And there are so many things you can do just in your everyday living to make it feel really real, you know,
Exactly right.
to make it feel really real, you know.
Oh my god. I tell you, and that's why I advocated for what I did, because not that other classes aren't important. So I don't want, and that's some of the opposition we got when we were going after this bill. But it's about, no matter what you do, I don't, if you're an athlete, if you're a scientist, if you're whatever it is, you're going to need to manage your money. Even if you wanted to work in, some parts of the government in doing the budget, as they
Mhm.
were trying to figure out the budget for this, it's like, how do our young people figure that out if they don't know how to do that? Like, it reiterated the need for them to get this information while they're in high
Mhm.
school. So at the time we were the 21st state, we're still not at 50. So hopefully it'll catch on and we'll get there. But the bottom line is, the more that they know, I feel like the better they're off, as well as we are better off, because hopefully the debt will go in the opposite direction by the time those folks that are going in high school now graduate, because they can make better decisions when they come out
Mhm.
relative to their money.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I know that my daughter, and she graduated about 12 years ago.
Mm,
She took a personal finance course, and I'm in a suburb of Atlanta. She
okay.
took a personal finance class, but it was optional.
Mm,
So, and I was so glad she took that. And she also learned about just basic economics,
yeah,
which you can relate to your personal life, especially microeconomics. So
yeah.
I was really glad that that was offered, but I'm with you all the way. Every state should make it mandatory in high school.
Yeah, because in Connecticut, you had some schools where it was offered, like your daughter had.
Mhm,
Some didn't have it at all, and then some were mandatory. So you had three different situations in the one state, depending on where you go within the state.
mhm.
So, and because I taught personal finance in school, like I would be brought in to, have an assembly about it, or do workshops on it. I saw the inconsistency in which it was offered, which is again supported the me advocating for this needs to be for all children of Connecticut at the high school level, and here we are. So
I know, you've done a great
you
job.
can make a difference. That's what I want to say to everybody. One person can make a difference by
Mhm.
being very diligent in advocating with those that can actually make a change. So yes.
I love that. Thank you. All right. You also talk a lot about entrepreneurship, and I know that you're really tuned into small business grants. And I
Yes.
wondered, do you like to say a couple of things about that for
Actually,
those who
I
might be
do.
interested?
Thank you, Beverly. So I actually have a platform, Grants for Small Business Owners, and I created that out of most of what I do is created out of my own situation, and that is being a small business owner and needing capital and didn't want to get loans all the time or continue to use the savings, my personal savings, to support the business. And I started applying for grants and started being awarded grants, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. And when I would share it, I'm very open online about a lot of things relative to my business, and people would ask, how do you do it, what do you do, what do you put in the application, etc. And I then created the platform to easily show, so when they want answers to those questions they can go there, because grants are the way that it's defined, I define it this way as well, is debt-free money for your business. So as you're looking for capital, there's many ways that you can get capital: loans, VCs, all of that, like people investing in your company, crowdfunding. There's a lot of ways, but grants are an amazing way to support things within your business. Depending on the grant will determine what you can do with the money for your business, or even if you're eligible to apply. But oh my gosh, when that started happening for me, and then people within the grants for small business owners community started winning grants as well, then it started taking off like wildfire. So I publish a list, or I should say my team and I curate a list the 25th of every month to share new grant opportunities with those that are within the community. And we also have, for those that are elite subscribers, we have monthly sessions to help people along their small business journey or their entrepreneurship journey if they're new and want and aspiring to be an entrepreneur. So we talk about everything as like business credit, the structuring of your business and things of that nature. But grants are free money. Even if you're not within my Grants for Small Business Owner community, you can Google grant opportunities. Just incorporate that into your entrepreneurship journey, because it's money that you can be awarded that you do not need to pay back. So I call that debt free, and we love that, right?
Oh, we love that.
That's what I would say about grants for small business owners. And one more thing, if you don't mind, don't always apply for those that are 10,000, 25,000, 250,000. There are grants out there for 250, for 500, for 1,000. That $500 could pay for, I don't know, your MailChimp that you have to pay for the month. They may pay for a contract service that you need within the business. So think about it all the way down to the micro level about what you need within your business, and number one, make sure you're eligible for the grant before applying for it, and use the dollars where it suggests that you should, and think about what your business needs. It could be supplies. If you have a food truck, it could be things that you need to service the truck, whatever it may be. But don't go for those any dollar amount that you're eligible for the grant opportunity.
That's great. I love that. And that's great advice about thinking about the lower numbers as well, not just
Yes,
going for the big one, but
yes.
there are all kinds of grants out there. And I love it that you do that for entrepreneurs. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Patrina. This has been such a fun and amazing conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you for having me and thank you for your patience as we got it on the calendar. I've had a great time.
Oh, I've had a great time too. And I want to say again, be sure that you tuned in to Patrina's podcast, It's My Money.
Yes.
And where else can they find you, Patrina?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, thank you, Beverly, for having me. I really appreciate it. I can be found across all social media platforms at It's My Money underscore ITSMYMONEY underscore. My website is itsmymoney.info. It's mymoney.info. And if you are a small business owner and want access to grants and or monthly live sessions with me and others, that is grantsforsmallbusinessowners.com.
All right. Thanks so much. And I hope you'll come back sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me for episode number 29. We had a fun chat with personal finance expert Patrina Dixon. She has been one of my favorite personal finance experts for quite a while now, and I am so delighted that she was able to be on the show and share her valuable insights on spending, saving, and how to get grants for your small business. Coming up next, we're going to talk about when it's okay to do a little bit of financial self care. There are times when a budgeted splurge is a good idea. So you don't want to miss that. That will be in episode number 30. And if you're enjoying my podcast, please subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify. I'll see you next time.